Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And before I proceed, I would like to make a humble request to everyone who are present over here to kindly switch off your mobile phone, or you can keep it on silent mode so that we do not have any interruption during the session. Thank you. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Kunga Chinde, Program Coordinator of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, and I'll be moderating today's inaugural session. On behalf of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to extend our warm welcome to our chief guest, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandeyji, Director of Inter-University Accelerator Center, New Delhi, our guest of honor, Venerable Geshe Samdila, former Vice Chancellor of the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, and our keynote speaker from quantum physics perspective, Professor Cecil Roy from the National Institute of Advanced Studies, NIAS, Bangalore, and last but not the least, our keynote speaker from the Buddhist philosophy perspective, our director, Venerable Geshe Damdula, and our esteemed chairpersons, speakers, and the participants who are gathered here for the conference on Time, Subtle and Gross Matter and Ontological Reality, Quantum Physics and Buddhist Philosophy, Series 7. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request our chief guest, Professor A.C. Pandeyji, Avinash Pandeyji, our guest of honor, Professor Geshe Samdila, and our keynote speaker, Professor Cecil Roy and Venerable Geshe Damdula, to kindly come up on stage and light the lamp of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to kindly give a loud round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right. Now, may I request our director, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, to kindly offer the white scarf, khata, and the souvenir to our chief guest, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandeyji, our guest of honor, Venerable Geshe Samdila, and our keynote speaker, Professor Cecil Roy, from the perspective of quantum physics. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandeyji. Now we have Venerable Professor Geshe Samdila. Professor Cecil Roy Ji from the perspective of quantum physics. Thank you very much, Kishila. All right, now before I begin with the session, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Tibet House, the culture center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Tibet House continues to follow the vision of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama in organizing this one-day conference on time, subtle, and gross matter and ontological reality, quantum physics, and Buddhist philosophy series 7, wherein eminent scholars from various universities and disciplines will share the valuable inputs and address the session. Now, before we begin with the actual session, I would like to give you the insight of Tibet House. Tibet House, New Delhi was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet for the purpose of preserving the cultural heritage of Tibet at the time when it faced extinction in its homeland, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture and Buddhist studies. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's recurring emphasis on developing a sense of universal harmony and compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the needs for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural tradition, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Tibet House aims to bring together Buddhist masters and Tibetologists, people across different disciplines, students and practitioners, and the common man through its various programs and events. Tibet House continues to expand its objective in saving Tibet's heritage and in exploring and working towards Tibet House potential contribution to the ethical development of the modern society. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House has come to recognize as a significant institution for the dissemination of the Tibetan culture and for Buddhist studies. Now we have Tibet House has a library, a museum, various study programs on Buddhist philosophy, conferences, or interdisciplinary subjects such as neuroscience and Buddhist psychology, quantum physics, spiritual ecology, and universal ethics. A publication unit which publishes around 10 to 15 books a year, and program division which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screenings, and exhibitions. Tibet House also offers 4 different courses on Buddhist philosophy, psychology, and Tibetan language course. Firstly, the first batch of Nalanda Masters course, which was launched on 9 December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, New Delhi, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with Sri Kiran Rijiju Ji, the Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Sri Najib Jung, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. The first batch of Nalanda Masters course was completed with 372 students from 44 different countries. Second batch of Nalanda Masters course on Nalanda Buddhist philosophy is already on the run, and we have enrollment from 54 different countries for the second batch of Nalanda Masters course. Now we have the Nalanda Diploma course, which was launched on 2018. 3 batches have been successfully completed so far. Nalanda Diploma course, which is a 14-month course. This course is designed specifically to accommodate people who are more seriously interested in Buddhist philosophy while being in the midst of busy schedule with other engagements and commitments. Till now, we have successfully completed 3 batches, and the 4th batch of the Nalanda Diploma course is already active. And I would also like to share a brief about the audience and the blessing of His Holiness His Holiness the Dalai Lama. On 2nd June 2023, close to 500 students who have recently graduated or are currently studying in the Nalanda Master's course and the Nalanda Diploma course offered by Tibet House, New Delhi, receive a gracious audience and blessing from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and an oral transmission of J. Rinpoche's in praise of dependent arising. At present, there are more than 4,000 students from 98 countries enrolled in courses run by, under the leadership of Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, Director of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, New Delhi. I would also like to mention that our Nalanda certificate course, which is for 3 months, the registration is open for it. So I would like to request each and every one of you who are interested to kindly register. And then we have Tibet House also offer Tibetan language course on a regular basis. There are 4 levels of learning offered at the very nominal fee with special discounts for students, and monastics are fully exempted from the fee. Till date, 25 batches has been successfully completed. For the new 26th batch, we have the registration is already completed, so we are about to begin with the 26th batch as well. Now, I would like to request our secretary, Mr. Tenzin Kunjabla, to kindly come on the stage and address the session. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Respected Professor Avinash Chandra Panditji, Director, Indian University Accelerator Center, New Delhi. Our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Geshe Samdinla, former Vice Chancellor, Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath. Our keynote speaker, Professor C.C. Royji, National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, Director, Tibet House, New Delhi. All the respected speakers and chairpersons who are gathered here today, distinguished guests, and all the participants who are gathered here physically and watching live from our online platform. It is my honor to extend a warm welcome to you all to the 7th series of our conference on the captivating nexus of quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy. As our program coordinator have said, he gave a glimpse of the activities of Tibet House. We have been organizing such conferences from time to time where speakers from various disciplines of studies come together to present their views and gain new insights. The topic for today's conference is quite heavy. I know it's heavy because I've been a physics student myself and a learner of Buddhist philosophy, and I'm still at level 0 in both the areas. But we are very fortunate to have a distinguished lineup of experts and speakers with us who will guide us into the realms of quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy. His Holiness the Dalai Lama saw Buddhism and science as different methodologies with a similar aim to investigate nature and reality using knowledge gained to improve the quality of life. The integration of quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy offers a unique lens through which we can contemplate the nature of reality, the essence of time, and the fabric of our existence. As we immerse ourselves in the dialogue and discourse, let us open our minds to the possibilities that arise from this harmonious fusion of disciplines. May this conference serve as a beacon of enlightenment, fostering a deeper understanding of the universe and our place within it. Once again, I welcome you all and let us embark on this intellectual journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tenzin Kunjabla, for the motivational words. Now I would like to give you a brief introduction about the book launch of the conference proceedings. On the conference proceeding on quantum physics, brain function in modern science and Buddhist philosophy, which was organized by Tibet House in 2018. So this book is a collection of insightful papers presented at the significant conference on quantum physics, brain function in modern science and Buddhist philosophy, like I mentioned, where distinguished scholars from the realms of science and Buddhism have participated. The focus was on the intersection between the quantum physics, brain functionality within modern science, and the philosophical tenets of Buddhism. These papers, authored by eminent figures in their respective fields, explore the connections and the correlations between these science and Buddhism. They explore into the parallels and potential harmonies between quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy, particularly in understanding consciousness, the mind, and the fundamental nature of reality. The collection is aiming to bridge the gaps between science and spirituality. Now, I would like to request our chief guest, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey, to kindly address the gathering. And before, I would like to give you a brief introduction about him. Now, we would like to launch the book launch of the conference proceeding. And may I invite Professor Kaveri Gilji to kindly come up on stage and do the honor. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give you a brief introduction about Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey. Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey was Director of Institute of Interdisciplinary Studies, University of Allahabad since 2016 before joining IUAC. He was the Vice Chancellor of Bundelkhand University from 2012 to 2015. He has earlier been Professor at University from Allahabad after obtaining Masters in Physics, Mathematics, and Doctorate in Philosophy degree from University of Allahabad. As a principal investigator, he led to development of 3 new centers in Allahabad University. He has been member of governing boards and academic councils courts of many institutes such as INST, Mohali, Aries, Nainital, Dr. H.S. Gore University, Saugor, and University of Allahabad. He is a member of many academic societies such as American Physical Society, Iron Beam Society of India, Indian Meteorological Society, Computer Society of India, IETE, Biotechnology Research Society of India. Now I would like to request Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey to kindly address the gathering. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Honorable Geshe Nawang Samten ji, Honorable Geshe Dorji Damdul, the keynote speaker, Professor Shishir Roy ji, all the distinguished speakers, participants of this organization, this particular workshop. I'll take one example. When I was introduced to this subject, a conference was organized by Geshe Samten Sahab at Sarnath. So I had an opportunity to meet His Holiness. So after the session, during break, I asked him that how could you decide that where you are going to get reincarnated? With a childlike smile on his face, he said, "Why should I tell you the secret of my..." But after that, he said, if you wish to go in detail, you refer this text of Shantideva, read that 14th poem, and the concept of the closed bracket which we used to study in mathematics, some kind of information was there. After that, we started working for universal ethics, in which we wanted to have how can we inculcate the concept of compassion in the students, the school-going children. So in that process, how to design course module, and many such instances are there that we are naturally having inherent compassion, which over a period of time when we grow old, that kind of compassion gets killed. So how to keep that going, that is again a challenge which under his guidance and also with the help of many volunteers in the country, we still pursue that part. I was introduced to have some connect with Allahabad University. So you might have heard about Schrodinger. Schrodinger is a father of quantum mechanics. And he was about to join Department of Physics, University of Allahabad as head of physics. So why I am referring to this particular incident, that at that point of time, the ancient wisdom which we had, which had a very sound basis of understanding the concept of duality, which is very much required for understanding the indeterminate or indeterministic physics. So somehow that concept might have resonated in their minds, that we should at least go and understand how philosophically we used to understand the concept of duality. But unfortunately, because of the wars, the World War, he could not join. And you might have also heard about the famous Schrodinger cat experiment, which is well designed, and that is a kind of thought experiment. And the things which we cannot do, we can definitely think and have, we can design those thought experiments to prove them logically, which we used to do in our philosophical traditions. And none other than Indian philosophical traditions, they questioned about, or they reasoned about the being of consciousness. Consciousness, where from this idea came, we can, if you trace back, you'll find the roots in our ancient Indian, Tibetan traditions, that we had something to explore. How can we find, how can we understand the consciousness? So the famous experiment, it was a cat in a box which you cannot see. There is a radioactive isotope kept there. You know, radioactive isotope decays. After a certain count, there is a pot in which a poison is there. And that again, thought experiment says that if the count reaches to this level, the pot in which poison is there, it breaks, poison is spilled. Cat may be in a state of awakened state or is sleeping. She may or may not notice the poison which is there. She may leak or not, but you don't know what has happened inside the box unless otherwise you open. That means before you open the box, both the possibilities exist. The cat might have leaked that poison, might have died, or unnoticingly she might be sleeping somewhere and still alive. So these kind of questions, through thought experiments, which we started working, and then the concept of meditation. And I am having another responsibility as a director of Inter-University Center for Yogic Sciences. So the yogis, the monks, they meditate, and they reach to a stage where they have got a different experiential knowledge, experiential content which they have, which cannot be described, which beyond description. You cannot write your experiences which you have through your meditation exercises, but it has got some changes to be brought in your hardware, the mind, the brain, which you have. And the individuality, the uniqueness of a person, and how those neurons fire among themselves to bring you uniqueness. That is another area of a domain of expertise which need to be explored in detail. The other important experiment which is there, that you have an instrument in which you, every time you push one ball this side, other ball this side, which is white and black. So that is alternatively pushing balls. The machine is there. If you are here in local, it is happening inside, in front of you. If white ball has gone that side, you can predict that black ball will be coming on this side. So this is kind of local connectivity, entanglement of these two things, that these two observables which are there, which are connected. This is local phenomena. But in 2022, and His Holiness also visited some of the scientists who shared the Nobel Prize, and he was very much, he was in conversation with many physicists to explore this idea, to explore and to understand what is mindfulness is. And during these discourses, he always used to challenge the physicists that you should come forward and study the brain, the mind, and then connect how we can explain the consciousness. So in 2022, the non-local phenomena, in which the idea which is going to get much of importance in quantum information, how two different phenomena are connected, entangled, how this information is teleported. This was demonstrated, and Nobel Prize was shared by 3 gentlemen. So this is one aspect which always keep us inspired to think of understanding the microscopic world, to understand the concepts which are there in form of quantum mechanics, and how different states exist, how they interact with each other, how do they interact with each other in terms of transferring the information. But this happens with us also. If we sleep, we dream, and sometimes dream may or may not come true. Sometimes we dream somebody who is far away, but next day we come to know that something has happened to that fellow who came in my dream. These are the questions which cannot be answered today, because the kind of instruments, the kind of equipment, the kind of measurements which we require are not possible. But down the line, definitely, we can understand what you are thinking, how you think, and this way the science progresses. But philosophically, we can always keep questioning ourselves with the logic, with the reasoning, with all available information which we have, and the journey towards knowing unknowns continues this way. So I will not take much of time. I'm sorry I got delayed because there was some confusion. I landed in Tibet House. So Professor Shishir Roy is there. He'll be speaking more on the quantum mechanics side, and Buddhist traditions, the philosophical aspects which are there, which generally we cannot decipher because there is disconnect, and the audience is bright enough to connect these two. That is what is expected from this particular workshop, conference. I wish a great success, and this is what we are going to get if anything discernible comes out of this particular exercise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey. Now I would like to call upon Venerable Professor Gishing Samdela. So before that, I would like to give you a brief introduction about him. Venerable Gishing Samdela obtained his master's degree from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi, and subsequently the Geshe Harampas degree, the highest Tibetan traditional degree equivalent to PhD, from Gandhi Monastic University, India. He worked as associate professor in the research department and later as a professor in the Department of Buddhist Philosophy in CIHTS. Thereafter, since 2001, he served as the director and the vice chancellor of the same institute for over 20 years. He served as a visiting professor in many international universities in US and Australia. He was honored with Padma Shri Award, one of the highest Indian civilian national awards, by the President of India in recognition of his contribution to education and literature in 2009. He was honored with Visak Samman in 2016 by the Government of India in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the preservation, development and promotion of Indian philosophy, arts and culture within and outside India, as well as his lifelong achievement in the services towards disseminating Buddhist studies and establishing academic institution. May I call upon Venerable Professor Geshe Samdela to kindly address the session. Thank you.
Sarvadrishti Pradhanaya Yat Sadramam Adeshyat Anukambam Ubadaya Tam Godamam Namami. Respected Professor Avinash Pandey, respected Kishadorji Damdurji, respected Professor Sisi Royji, distinguished scholars and friends. Today, we are here to discuss on time, subtle and gross matter, and Buddhist philosophy. It has been quite some time, the last 3-4 decades, since this convergence of Eastern Indian civilization and particularly Buddhist tradition and Western science. So now we have reached to an extent that it is now flowing in various directions in terms of study of mind, in terms of philosophy, in terms of study of matters and things like that. So we can find the two great civilizations, this science in the West and philosophy and ancient science in the East. Here, particularly Buddhist science and philosophy. We have approached in the same direction in terms of finding the reality. The objectives are, not completely different, but the vision is different. The exploration in the West is confined to material reality, the physical world, whereas in the material reality and also to achieve and outcome of the material world and further development of the material world in the West. Whereas in the East, and particularly in the Buddhist philosophy, the exploration of mind and the physical world are meant for not for physical development, but for our own understanding of the world, which makes a lots of impact on our perception. That is the main purpose. That is how you can find in Buddhist philosophy different levels of philosophical schools which have made attempts to explore the world, physical world, because the exploration of physical world is necessary because our senses are the doors through which we receive informations from outside. Our connection to the external world is our senses, the five senses, and how we perceive, and then what kind of understanding we have, the image that we have in our mind depends on how we understand the world. That is why in order to eliminate the gap between the reality and perception is very important in Buddhist philosophical understanding and also in spiritual practice. It is the belief of Indian philosophical schools in general, and also particularly in Buddhist soteriological understanding, that unless we are able to understand the reality out there, we are not going to make any substantial change within our mind, because we react on how we perceive the external world. That is why in Buddhist philosophical schools we have different schools starting from Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, Vijnanavada, and Madhyamika schools. And all of these schools have made attempts to understand what really the physical world is. So that is why the concept and understanding and exploration of time and matters have been a very important part of the exercise in all of these philosophical schools. This is not just for gaining knowledge, but to bring fundamental changes within our own perception and spiritual development. So Buddhist Vaibhashikas have their own take on how we perceive and how the particles exist and things like that. I won't go into detail because we don't have time. But they have also mentioned about the particles, the smallest particles, indivisibility of the smallest particles, as well as the gaps between the particles. And those indivisible particles are regarded as permanent, which were not acceptable for the higher level of schools. And then again, the higher level of higher schools refuted those ideas that no particles, no product, no Sanskrit dharma can be permanent in any case. So everything, every Sanskrit dharma, every product is impermanent. And also when we look at those things, then at the level of Madhyamika, then everything dissolves into emptiness. That emptiness to the extent that there is nothing out there. So the nothing out there in a substantial form. So because we need to for our spiritual understanding and spiritual development, if there stands anything out there as substantial entity, then that becomes the foundation of our grasping, on the basis of which all the afflictions arise. So in order to reduce that, eliminate that foundation, the exploration of external world is, extremely important. So, in Buddhism, even though the method of exploration is very different, it is through thought experiments and through, mental experimentations, by using the epistemological kind of devices and systems which have been, developed for several centuries, over millennia in India, and then the logic, the systems developed. These are the the devices through which we reach to that conclusion. Whereas in the West, since it is the exploration of material world is based on physical entities that needs to be explored in a laboratory, and then now we have reached to such an extent, like quantum mechanism and the emptiness. They have very similar kind of the understanding of the reality. Whereas in Buddhism, in the West, you see the ontological understanding that has given rise to wonderful technologies, which has been, which has made a significant contribution to transportation, to information and medical field and things like that. But at the same time, those technologies have also made some harmful contribution to the human, society. Now here in the Buddhist side, those explorations are, as I mentioned earlier, explorations are made in order to, reduce and eliminate the perception of having substantial entity out there which does not exist. It worked for the meditators. It worked for the philosophers, because they have reached to that extent through their exploration, mental exploration, and it worked. And experientially, that has worked, and it made, tremendous changes in a human mind and reached to that level. Elimination of afflictions and cultivation of compassion and altruism to unlimited extent is not possible unless we have the proper conviction of the world, reality of the world. That is why it is very important. Now these two, the one approaching from inside to inside and one approaching to outside, these two traditions are converging. And this conversion has played an important role now, bringing substantial changes in the global, civilization. And earlier, when we talk about compassion, then it becomes a religious matter. But now, many scientists are talking about compassion, how altruism can be developed, how compassion can be developed, and this has become now a subject of science. So eventually, we can, by the convergence of these two civilizations, there will be certainly a very, significant kind of impact on global, say, education and global, health and global understanding of the world. So I was coming from just last week, I attended a conference in Emory University where we talked about the education, to bring education in school levels from kindergarten to 12th level, and also thereafter in the higher educations. How scientifically, as His Holiness always says, that the teaching of compassion should be based on, teaching of secular ethics should be based on scientific evidences and common sense. And this is what is happening now, that many of the countries, over 40 countries have introduced this C-learning in so many thousands of schools. and it is making very substantial impact in the mind of the students, children, and which in turn helps their family too. So I think this, and also like, for example, now, since we have very little time, then there is, the time. Now, since this is time is a very important, subject that is related to our life, daily life, Buddhism has explored in this, field as not being an independent entity, but it is just simply a property of a Sanskrit Dharma product. Whereas in science, in the classical science we were discussing this morning, it is a separate, substantial, independent entity. And also in other schools, in Vaisheshikas and Nayayikas, it is independent, it is, substantial, it is permanent. But according to Buddhism, the time is impermanent, time is completely interdependent, and time doesn't have its own entity, independent entity, but it is a property of the product, the Sanskrit Dharma. So no need to go into detail, but these are meant to develop our own perception with respect to the reality out there, right? Either the reality of the inner world or reality of the external world. So if we utilize this, just as modern science is being utilized in technology, this kind of understanding is to be utilized for inner development and spiritual development. Otherwise, this becomes irrelevant. If we have a theoretical understanding and no application for inner development, it is irrelevant. Just as we have very good understanding of the science, but if it is not applied in technology, then all these great manifestations would not have been possible. So now this convergence is taking place. Buddhism can take a lot from the science in understanding its own ontological, nature, and the science, as it is doing, can take lots of, informations and the knowledge systems that Buddhism has in order to enrich its understanding and to make more contribution to the scientific studies. So with this, I would like to thank the Tibet House, particularly Kishe Tojidamdullah and his wonderful staff for inviting me and to be with you on this occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Professor Geshe Samdela, for your wonderful words. Now may I request Professor Sisi Royji, our keynote speaker from the perspective of quantum physics and the convener of this conference today, to come up on stage and address this session. And before that, I would like to give you a brief introduction about him. Professor Sisi Roy is a theoretical physicist working on foundations of quantum theory, cosmology, and brain function modeling. He has deep interest in Indian philosophy and epistemological issues in modern science. He has published more than 200 peer-reviewed papers in various international journals and 15 research monographs and edited volumes in Kluwer Academic Publishers, World Scientific, Springer, Roulette Taylor, and Francis, etc. His recent monographs include Demystifying Akasa, Quantum Vacuum and Consciousness, jointly with Ralph Abraham, Epigraph, New York, 2011, Decision Making and Modeling in Cognitive Science, Understanding Space, Time, and Causality, Modern Physics and Ancient Indian Tradition, jointly with B.V. Srikantan, Rutledge Taylor, and Francis in 2020. He has visited many US and European universities as a distinguished professor and a speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Sisi Royji. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm indebted to my great friend Geshe-la Dorji Damdul for inviting me here, and many times I have been here and we are discussing many things since maybe 2000. I am in Drepung Lojaling Monastery and we spend wonderful time, and His Holiness Dalai Lama we met, and of course his encouragement and inspirations. I've been associated with Tibet House, then respected chairman, our chief guest, Professor Pandey, and chief guest, Professor Shamtenji. I know him for quite a long time. Now, special thanks to Geshe-la Damdul, because after long years he is able to publish the book and many discussions, many corrections, and after that it's a really very important event. Then for today's keynote speech, I like to mention one thing. I have many students and I know many young quantum physicists in the country, around the country. The very important questions they ask me, well, is it necessary to study philosophy at all? Whether it will give some insights or something so that we can do our research in our own field. This is very important question, and not only by these young people, but if you look at the 20th century physics world, there are two very distinguished personalities. One is Steven Weinberg, who won Nobel Prize in Physics. He is very influential physicist in 20th century, and he is very serious physicist, not like comment something in philosophy. And another is Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking and Steven Weinberg are no more, and they passed away a couple of years before. So they raised very serious questions that physics, especially physics, in such a state that we don't need to study philosophy at this stage, because it contains huge number of data, like Hubble Space Telescope. It collects billions of data, and people are trying to understand modern cosmology. Even recently Chandrayaan was sent by our Indian Space Research Organization. They are sending lots of data. In biology too, we have lots of data. So why do we need to study philosophy? This is very important question. And physicists are divided on this issue. Even Avinashji, he mentioned name of a great quantum physicist, Erwin Schrödinger. Schrödinger, in his Dublin lecture, he gave 2 lectures in Dublin, and now it is available in the book form. So the main objective of this lecture was whether we should look for our ancient wisdom. Is it useful? At that time, he was full professor in theoretical physics in Dublin Institute of Advanced Study, and then he told, how do I justify taking salary from the institute and speaking on ancient wisdom? At that time, he maintained ancient wisdom means Greek philosophy. He tried to justify that both scientists and philosophers, they look around the world, outside and inside, but from their own perspective. And the concepts which we are using in both the discipline, both the paradigm, science and philosophy, they normally take it from Greek point of view, because he was not that time referring Indian wisdom. But if you look from historical perspective, Indian wisdom was much, much older than Greek thoughts. So he tried to justify why we should learn, we should study or investigate philosophy also. Now, one simple answer may be whether by studying this Indian philosophy, including Buddhist one, we can get some insights. And this is the questions we are raising to most of the conferences. We are asking the traditional scholars in Buddhism or Vedantin or some other disciplines, can you give some insights so that we can resolve the dilemmas, we can resolve the epistemological and ontological issues in science. Not only that, there is a big progress in technology. Whether we can discover a new technology by studying our ancient Indian wisdom. This is very, very important issue. And people should come up with some ideas who can read the original text in Pali, Sanskrit or Tibetan. Now, since the birth of quantum theory is a theory for which describes the behavior of the microscopic entities like electrons, protons, photons, quarks, Higgs bosons, etc. What do we mean by microscopic entities? Because in physics we have a kind of division between microscopic entities, macroscopic entities. And microscopic entities are characterized by its mass, its length, and some other characteristics. So, quantum theory was discovered by people like Erwin Schrödinger, Niels Bohr, Louis de Broglie, Pauli, Heisenberg, and other people. One important issue was raised by Niels Bohr, that unless you observe anything, you cannot say what it is. Suppose there is electron, a tiny microscopic entity. Unless you observe electrons through microscope or kind of instrument, you cannot say what it is. So, in a sense, reality here is observer dependent, or philosophically we say this is epistemic, reality is epistemic. But due to advancement of quantum theory, quantum field theory, again people are coming to the ontological issues. What are the ontology or substratum on which these theories are based? And especially it comes regarding the origin of the universe, like Big Bang, what is before Big Bang. One sensational news was published in New York Times a couple of years before regarding a certain experiments in quantum theory. The title of the news was Rashomon effect in quantum theory. What is Rashomon effect? There is a famous film, Rashomon, directed by Kurosawa, Japanese, internationally acclaimed film director. So what is the essence of that? One samurai was murdered and police was trying to look who was the real culprit. So they interviewed many people. And the different people, they give their different opinion. So the question comes, is reality observer dependent? And many quantum experiments have been done, and they say that it is observer dependent, which is compatible with Niels Bohr idea. But, well, there is difference of opinion. Now, this conference, we are using terms like time, subtle gross matter, and ontological reality. Now, how do you perceive the reality? Professor Shamtenji told that, okay, first is the perception comes through sensory organs like touch, eye, ears, etc. The 5 sensory organs are there. So, In science, what we do, along with sensory perception, sensory organs, we use instruments. Like to find the existence of the microscopic entities, you need very, very precise instruments by which you can look. Even the question is more deeper, like with instrument, we need instruments to look into the bacteria. So, bacteria are not at the same size, same mass of the microscopic entities like electrons, protons, or neutron. Or if you need to see the galaxy, or like quasars, or like faraway stars, we need telescopes. So, the question comes, what is the definition of subtle matter? What is the difference between subtle matter and gross matter? So, we use sensory organs and instruments. What people in philosophy, they talk about. They use the critical analysis like scientists, they use logic like scientists, but they normally don't talk about instruments. They say experience. Now we are stuck. As a scientist, it's very difficult to say what is experience. So the issue is, in both the paradigm, we use, we study, we construct hypothesis formation, and one, in science, one more is necessary called empirical testing, empirical verification. I mean, there may be two theories to explain one observation even in science. I can tell you briefly one story. In New Jersey, two great persons lived that time, one Albert Einstein and his neighbor Kurt Gödel. Gödel was a famous mathematician. One day, Gödel came to Albert, said, "You see, I have found a different solutions of your equation, mathematical equations." Albert told, "Okay, give me, let me see." And after 3 days, Albert went to Gödel and told, "Yes, your solution is right, but it's not physical. Means physically it is not verifiable. So I can discard your solutions." So this predictability is one thing, and to verify the predictions. This is very, very important in case of science and technology. Now, you are thinking, in Buddhist philosophy also, there is something, Samtenji was mentioning, like thought experiment. In science we say Gedanken experiments, German word, Gedanken experiments. So I am tempted to mention one thing called Payasi Sukto. Payasi was a prince, and he had a long dialogue with Buddhist monk Kashyap. It occurred after 200 years of parinirvana of Gautam Buddha. So Prince Payasi, he was putting, 10 experiments, all thought experiments. And Buddhist monk, he was refuting these kind of things. So this is a famous dialogue. And if you look at these 10 experiments, the first experiment was that what is the proof that vital force exists? You place a prisoner in a chamber, and after his death, before his death, you take the weight of both the chamber along with the prisoner, and after his death, you again take the weight of the prisoner. And if there is no difference, so how will you prove that vital force exists? But in each experiment, Buddhist monk Kashyap, he refuted. So you can think of Payasi Sukto. He was a modern day scientist who believed in empirical testing. But I don't know what happened after that. Many thousand years have passed. Maybe my colleagues are here, the Buddhist scholars, whether these kind of thought experiments or Gadankin experiment have been performed. But in science, even in quantum physics, Avinashji, he was talking about Schrödinger's cat experiment. It's a thought experiment. And in science, mathematics, and I know in Western philosophy, there are lot of such Gedanken experiments. And I have little knowledge about such kind of Gedanken experiments in Buddhist philosophy. Only I mention Payashishukta. So my my provocation to young people here, whether they can think of such or construct, even at the Gedanken level, which can be verified or cannot be verified, to show that the subtle or sukshma and gross sthulo, whether these differentiations, what they talk about in philosophy and Buddhist philosophy, that can also be distinguished in the arena of modern science. If they can do it really, it will open up a new vistas. Like in physics, there are many, many such experiments. Schrödinger cat experiment, beginner's paint, or started from Galileo's. So I try to conclude my lecture that the young minds here, please try to construct such kind of Gedanken experiment so that it will really give impetus to think of philosophy and science together.
Thank you very much, Professor Ciceroji, for your inspiring and motivational words to the younger generation. And now we have Venerable Geshe Dorjit Abdullah, the director of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Before that, I would like to give you a brief introduction about him. Venerable Geshe Dorjit Abdullah is the director of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, since 2011. Venerable Geshe Dorjit Abdullah served as the interpreter and translator for His Holiness the Dalai Lama within India and abroad. He is one of the chief editors and co-author of scientific, philosophical, Buddhist, and secular books with prominent professors in the United Kingdom and the United States of America, as well as with His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself. These books are being used as centers and institutes all over the world to study more thoroughly on Buddhist philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, and science. He has translated several important Buddhist philosophy texts and has contributed various papers for national and international conferences. Venerable Geshe Dorjit Abdullah has profound knowledge of science and interaction with the world's renowned physicists gave him the unique ability to teach Buddhist philosophy with a modern twist that many of his non-Tibetan students appreciate. I would like to request Venerable Geshe Dorjit Abdullah to kindly address the session, sir. Thank you.
Respected Professor Pandeyji and respected Venerable Geshe Samdenla, and my very dear friend Professor Ciceroji, and as Professor Cicero very clearly indicated, that our friendship is since 2005. I very clearly indicated. I very clearly remember that the he in those days he was so curious about the concept of relationship, they're in science or in reality. And he was not getting an answer as a brilliant physicist. So he thought, who must be the person who can explain this? Oh, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Then he wrote his, Dear His Holiness the Dalai Lama, please explain to me how to explain the relationships. So then, of course, His Holiness received thousands of mails. And the secretary, that time I just finished my Geshe degree. I went to England, Cambridge, came back, and then the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama forwarded the mail to me saying that, Geshe-la, you give answer to this question. So I communicated with Professor Cicero. So this is how we became extremely close. And then I invited of course, I can sense that he's extremely brilliant, and that this concept cannot be discussed just through emails. And so we should meet. And then I asked if you have time to come to my monastery. So he and his wife, who's also the doctorate in physics, both of them came to Devon Losulun Monastery and stayed there for about 10 days, I think. And both of them were very fortunate to have met with my teacher, Venerable Geshe Namgyal Rinpoche, who passed away now, and received many instructions. And we had extensive discussions on quantum physics, relativity theory, Buddhist philosophy, and so forth. That was really a beautiful moment. So, having said this, to make it very quick, this being the keynote speech, I'm going to touch on almost all the topics, but very briefly, and so that the more detailed the forms, I'm expecting you, the participants, to learn from the experts who are going to speak on each of these topics in more detail. First, we see that we talk about in quantum physics, the concept of the quantum decoherence, superposition of various possibilities. And in Buddhist philosophy, I don't want to go into the quantum physics side. From Buddhist philosophy, what do you find about the concept of, particularly the concepts like the superpositions of the various possibilities and so forth? So we see that we have to see the things as the Geshe Ngawasandala very clearly indicated, and also Professor Cicero indicated, that the reality, what is the ontological reality there? What is ontological there? In other words, in another words, I can say, what exists there objectively, or what's the ontological reality? What is objectively, this question? So from this, I'm sure that those speaking from the Buddhist point of view, they will give more detailed explanation how everything is mental construct, and yet having the need to conform to the functionality of the world, not denying, not defying the law of cause and effect, or the cause and effect, I would say. Albert Einstein, who would be more happy to talk about the determinism as opposed to randomness there. So we see the same object on two different levels. One, very close inspection, as Professor Cicero talked about the micro world and a macro world. So the relativity theory operates so well, can be applied so well on the macro world, but the quantum mechanics cannot be applied on the macro world as universally. Instead, it operates so well with the micro world. So we see that there's a discrepancy between the formulas, the rules, regulations, or the physical theories applicable to the macro and the micro as two different things. And Buddhist philosophy, the macro world represented by the conventional truth, and the micro world represented by the ultimate truth. So we see that these two truths explain the same object in two different points of view. So one is what is seen by the conventional, the mind, and the other is seen by the ultimate mind. So all the things that we talk about in this world, like for example, say how the electrons, they behave, manner in which Professor Panditji indicated, teleportation, the concepts, the entanglement. So all these, they fall under the category of the various levels of the behaviors of things on the conventional level, not on the ultimate level, how the electrons behave on the different levels, say how the magnetic effect, electromagnetic effect plays a role in this, how that operates. So with that, even within the conventional level, we see that there are various levels. Some operate on what Professor Cicero explains that on the Newtonian physics. On that level, we see one reality, and then go a little deeper, we see the particles, they behave slightly differently, and then on the quantum level, they behave extremely differently. Yet the thing is that how you perceive them, how you perceive the independent of the observer, as Professor Cicero again said, picking up the Professor Niels Bohr's the reflection that independent of the observer, observed makes no sense. In other words, say things do exist so efficaciously and infallibly they operate very efficaciously, but the thing is, objectively, what is the answer is there's nothing from the object. Things do exist so efficaciously on the conventional level. And then the convention, we keep in mind that it has many levels. So, for example, how the electrons operate, unlike the quantum entanglement, so forth. So they behave, but on a different level. Within conventionality, we can see that there are various levels of perceptions. And beyond the perception, what is there? Then the Nagarjuna very clearly indicated there's nothing really there. So with this in mind, some of the features that we need to keep in mind, like they say the conventional truth, the truth that is perceptible by the conventional analysis, conventional mind. So it can have like three aspects, what we call as the positive phenomena, affirming negative phenomena, non-affirming negation. But ultimate truth that we talk about, in fact, the same conference here, now the professor passed away from NIAS, Professor Cicero, you remember? You're the former director. Yeah. What is his name? He was the chief guest. So, no. Shirikandan, yes. In fact, here we talked about the ontological reality and as an ultimate reality. And Professor Shirikandan asked on this platform that how can you say that the ontological reality that you would see or physics would see, and that is the ultimate? So this question asked here is an extremely pertinent question. So, see whether or not what we see as what is the demarcation of the ultimate truth. So we talk about the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. In a loose sense, I talk about the macro world, the truth on the macro world and the truth on convention, the micro world. So what constitutes the ultimate truth? And of course, that requires to be more discussed. They discuss more. And the ultimate truth, the final reality, of course we need to settle what constitutes ultimate reality, whether or not the ontology that we discovered, that explain, qualifies the ultimate, or there's something more. There can be greater possibility for something more than what we find as ontological reality. So for this ultimate reality, one thing is that the qualification that the aspect is that it should be non-affirming negation. Non-affirming negation. And of course, there's a very technical term, what constitutes, again, what is meant by non-affirming negative. And that why ultimate should be non-affirming negative. All these questions should be resolved. So in this connection, micro and the macro world. So in physics, what we see as the disparity between quantum physics and relativity theory, quantum physics only explaining about the macro world, and the relativity theory explaining about the macro world. In Buddhist philosophy, macro, micro are seen with the same object. Both aspects are seen depending on what perception you, or what the perspective you take, or what perception you employ. And then quickly talking about, so this is something which I touched earlier, about the non-locality and so forth. I said this is very interesting. So in Buddhist philosophy and more metaphysical the level, we see that the mind and your energy. And then when I talk about the mind, it is not the like esoteric mind; it's the empirical mind. For example, I personally believe that when you talk about when you have any discussions with the physicists or neuroscientists, it's so important for us to discuss those points which are only empirical, which is not something esoteric to be experienced later on and so forth. So this is something which usually when talk about the self, the person, what is that empirical self? The self who wants happiness, who doesn't want to suffer, who doesn't want to experience the wars, war-torn zones. How many people are suffering so much? So the self is affected. The self. This is self, empirical self, which can be affected. We can have the potential to experience happiness. This is the empirical reality. These are the topics to be brought on the table to discuss, particularly having discussions with the physicists and the neuroscientists. Whereas if it's purely the psychological or purely metaphysical, there's a different story. So, but the point is that when you talk about the mind, which is empirical, so this mind will come to, if you study more deeply, we see that this mind, they operates on the basis of in connection with this, some kind of energy. When I speak of the energy, again, it's not either the obscure something, the unseen, the thing, or energy, how we discuss in electromagnetic energy and so forth. No, it's actually none of these two. This is something which can be experienced, and yet at the same time, logically we can explain it. And Professor Siroy made the distinction between what is predictable and what is verifiable. Although we can engage in prediction of something very precisely, but if it cannot be verified empirically, again, it is not scientifically proven as something solid. So with this in mind, when talk about the non-locality or quantum physics, this reminds me of when you train your mind. Non-locality, when it comes to that, is is applicable on the subtle, say the electrons, on the level of the electrons and quarks. On that level, then we see the behavior of these in the form of non-locality, quantum entanglement. These are all these behaviors seen on that level. So likewise, in the Buddhist, the study of the philosophy and psychology, we see that as the mind becomes subtler, if you train our mind, we can train. If you don't train, then our mind can become very subtle. At that point, you lose control. When the mind is grosser, you have the control. For example, now, whether you want to sit here or you want to go out to have a cup of tea, it's in your hand. You have some degree of control there. But in the dream, you don't have the control because we are not trained. You have the mind, you can have the different dreams. You don't have the control. So, whereas some people who train themselves, and the training is not that difficult. It's not something the obscured, something with the blessing of some gurus and so forth. Only then these things happen. No, it's a matter of the practical reality. You train yourself to see the mind, even during the dream. Then you see that you can control the dream. So with this in mind, as the mind can be controlled more and more, then the mind on a very subtle level, we see that it operates alongside the energy. This energy which you can feel. For example, say, when somebody says something nasty to you, you're being mentally, you feel there's some kind of energy flow there. We talk about the hormones and so forth, but there's an energy there which makes the hormones move. So that energy and the subtle mind, these are very closely connected. When that happens, then all these, what we call as miracles, they happen on that level. When the subtle mind is activated, subtle energy is activated. So through training. So just as with the quantum physics, on the macro level, then we see the different behaviors of the teleportation, quantum entanglement, non-locality. All these are the seen on the macro level, not on the macro level. Likewise, when the mind becomes subtler in a Buddhist psychology and philosophy, when mind becomes subtler, then the mind, you can see that mind can behave very differently, subtle energy. So, for example, it's very interesting. There's an anecdote at the time of the Buddha that one monk who was just very ordinary monk, and later on, he was being marginalized by his own brother, who was a very senior, respected monk, and all the monks were invited for lunch, and this monk was not invited, and he felt so low, and the Buddha came and gave him some trainings, and through the training, he was able to activate the subtle mind, because of which he manifested like 1,000 times simultaneously, 1,000 at different places. So all these are they moved. Physically, there's no explanation how they communicate with each other. But this is what is happening. This is exactly what we call as the two electrons talking to each other, metaphorically talking to each other. Although there's nothing connecting the two. So likewise, there's nothing connecting the two things. The thousands of manifestations, all behaving differently. So these we see that they're on the subtle level, just as in quantum mechanics operating on the macro level, some very strange behaviors are seen. Likewise, on the mental and the subtle energy explained in Buddhist philosophy, the very strange phenomena of what we call as miracle can be seen. And everybody can perform this miracle if you're trained in this subtle mind. So we talk about the two truths, ultimate truth and conventional truth. This is a place we recently visited, the Vulture Peak Rajgir, where the Buddha taught this ultimate truth, what constitutes the ultimate reality or the ontological reality. And so the essence of what the Buddha taught was this: form is empty, which means that the ontologically speaking was a form. There's nothing to be identified as a form from the object, but the subjectively, on the level of the observer, the form does exist. What is seen as empty objectively, subjectively it is seen as a form. All the, infallible cause and effect, these are all operating on the basis of the subjective level. And these two things, form is no other than emptiness. Form, which is the macro world, and emptiness, the micro world. These two operate not on two different domains, but they're operating within the same content of the object. And likewise, emptiness is not other than form. These two operate on within the same object, depending on how you look at it. When you look at it on the subtle level, it behaves differently. When you look at it on the grosser level, it behaves differently. And then to understand, really get there, it's not that easy, of course. We require extensive studies. So we have like the explanation of the 5 levels of the emptiness, shunyata. And interestingly, the quantum vacuum, concept of quantum vacuum, again, this brings us to the understanding of the concept of shunyata, emptiness. Vacuum has connotation of emptiness, is very interesting. Quantum on the macro level, and the emptiness again on the micro level. On the macro level, how they behave is like one in the form of vacuum and one in the form of emptiness. When we speak about the vacuum, quantum vacuum, it's not like nothing really there. You can discuss with the physicists, you'll see that, particularly I would say Professor Cicero, he would explain that in the form of innumerable or incredible or innumerable amount of possibilities, various possibilities there. How the Big Bang started. Before the Big Bang, there was a quantum vacuum there. So likewise, emptiness is not like nothingness. So there is a tremendous potential to give rise to the whole universe operating so efficaciously in the form of cause and effect. And the causation, free will, and determinism. This is a very interesting topic, and of course, we would be most happy to see that the scholars are going to discuss on this part. The causation, cause and effect, and the free will. Are these two, do things operate on the cause and effect of the level, or there's some form of the randomness, or there's some form of free will, or causation, the causation leading to determinism, and then the randomness leading to free will, or that they can ever actually overlap. This is a big discussion, and of course, that in the domain of science, particularly Albert Einstein, he's not happy with the randomness. He speaks about that the universe must operate on the basis of the cause and effect level, on that basis. So he's more like following the predeterminism, and whereas Niels Bohr, those on the side of the sheer the quantum physics, would be more happy to explain the randomness concept. So in Buddhist philosophy, what is this? In Buddhist philosophy, there is no contradiction there between the two. In fact, I remember one of my teachers, extremely brilliant scholar, and one of his students, the American lady, and whose husband was a physicist. And she was so keen that her physicist husband should become a Buddhist. And the physicist husband said that I will become a Buddhist right away if you give me an answer to one question. And then the wife thought that, oh, Buddhism is my area, he doesn't know Buddhism, so I'll be happy to give any answer. And if you can give me a satisfactory answer to this question, I'll become Buddhist right away. This was what he said. And he said, yes, I'm ready. Ask me the question. And the question asked was that Buddhism believes in law of karma. Law of karma meaning cause and effect. And Buddhism also believes in free will. If you accept free will, where is the law of karma? If there's law of karma, where is the free will? Law of karma means what you do is because of the previous karma. That karma is because of the previous karma. If that is the case, it's determinism. Where is free will? If there's no free will, why should I have to freely join Buddhism? This was the question. So she got stuck. She didn't have an answer. She emailed me, even not me, emailed her teacher who was also my teacher, and who was a brilliant logician, philosopher, and who was actually a Geshe colleague of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the final degree in philosophy, who sat for the same degree in the same year as His Holiness. And later on, His Holiness also received some teachings from him when he was in his last days of his life. So she was asking this question, and of course he doesn't check the emails. So she sent it to me. And looking at it, I was so intrigued as a young boy. I must be in my 20s. I was so intrigued. This is a question that I like to get answered. And now this right teacher, my teacher, he's the right person in this world who can give this answer. I was so great excited. I printed this out and went there and gave it to my teacher, and he read it for me. I read it, and I was just waiting for the answer. And he said, Dorji, give some answer. Right? Okay, so this was what happened. Okay, so the point is that they say the fact that in Buddhism that the physical world is all operating, physical and the mental world, they are all operating on the basis of cause and effect, no doubt. This is an undeniable fact, meaning that in Buddhism, if somebody distorts by saying that, oh, in Buddhism, free will is there, that it's not necessary that the cause and effect is operating on all phenomena, this is altering the facts of Buddhism. What you find in the Buddhism, does it tell you the reality, the fact? If you say that, yes, everything in Buddhism is fact, this is chauvinism. This is chauvinism. So, what we need to make a distinction. What is taught in Buddhism is a fact or not, put that into question mark. You don't accept it. But what is taught in the Buddhism should not be altered as taught in Buddhism. What is taught in Buddhism, you should be able to say that this is taught in Buddhism. That should not be altered. So in Buddhism, the fact is that the Buddha told all composite things are impermanent. Impermanent has a connotation of the cause and effect relationship. So all physical and the mental world should necessarily operate on this cause and effect according to the Buddhist philosophy. Having said this, that is all the causation, and there's nothing randomness. If that is the case, then where is the free will? This question. This is a big question, and I'd like to make it very quick, that free will and determinism, we cannot define it in our own ways. Free will and determinism is what we can see in the world. So we have to define according to how that is seen in the world. You cannot define it in your own ways. So free will, when I say that, okay, say, will I drink this water or not? You will say it depends on your free will. It depends on you, which means that you're going to use your free will. If you said you will drink it, I'll not drink it, I'll keep it there. If you say you will not drink it, I'll drink it. I'm using free will. At the same time, say after drinking this, if you ask me, what did you drink? Just to challenge you. So challenging you is the factor, is a cause for me to deliberately drink it when you said you will not drink it. So that is the cause and effect operating. Meanwhile, there's a free will there. There's no contradiction there. So there's overlapping of the cause and effect and the free will. So all these, and of course, when I say this, you cannot deny what I'm saying. At the same time, you will not feel so comfortable. Or free will and determined free will and cause and effect, these two are just mutually exclusive. These two cannot be seen the inclusive contained within the same object. How he explained, I cannot really deny him, but I'm not comfortable, right? So the real feeling of they becoming comfortable, the ease will come to us only when you know what is known as conventional truth, that things exist conventionally. Say, for example, if I want to, you enjoy this water, don't look at through electron microscope. If I look at the same object through electron microscope, I will not see the water. And if I like to enjoy the painting of Michelangelo, if I like to enjoy the painting of Michelangelo, don't look at it through electron microscope. You will never enjoy this. You will just see atoms, electrons, protons. You will never enjoy the painting. So this painting is undeniable reality that this is painted by one of the most brilliant painter and sculptor in the world, Michelangelo. And yet, if you want to enjoy this, don't look at through the macro, on the macro level, but through the electron microscope. So there's one reality which is undeniably existent. At the same time, you have to look at it through one particular perspective, not through the most minutest, most refined perception. So this is known as the conventional truth. If you don't understand the conventional truth, the disparity between the so-called disparity between the causation and the free will cannot be resolved forever. Okay, I know that there are many things there. Then they say the causation, and some people may say that in Buddhism, the free will is there, and then yes, free will is there, causation there. How is causation there? I'm going to cite some of the facts there. Thank you. Say, for example, the mantra, which is very popularly taught by Buddha, Ye dharma hetu prabhava, all phenomena arise from causes. So this cause and effect is taught there. And free will. And where is the free will in Buddhism? Where the Buddha taught? Again, this is where we see that the second verse says, ceasing from karma's afflictions is nirvana. Karma's afflictions arise from conceptualization. Sorry, there's some typos there. Which in turn arises from elaboration. Elaboration ceases by the wisdom of emptiness. So karma is the intention. So this intention is the one. Karma means action driven by your intention. So this intention is the basic fabric of free will. So because of this intention, then you do good or bad is in your hand. So there's a Tibetan expression which says that if you want to know your past, you look at your body today, how healthy you are, how happy you are physically, how comfortable you are. And if you want to know your future, look at your mind. It does not say look at your body. It says look at your mind, which means that the free will. You decide to do good things, future will be good. You decide to do bad things, future will be gloomy and dark. So this is the free will. And this more detail, you will find this in the explanation of the wheel of life, particularly second one, karma, in the link. The 12th, this painting, this is not just arbitrarily that I brought it here. This is a painting which depicts the concept of free will in relation to the second, which is the law of karma. And then there are a few things like identity, individuation, non-locality, I don't have time here. And so I would rather stop it here. And finally, what I would say is that practically speaking, there are extremely brilliant ideas, concepts in physics, Buddhist philosophy and so forth, practical reality, is there an end to the problems? Okay, problems like what? Look at the tears of the world. This is reality. After talking about the physics all the time, after talking about the Buddhist philosophy all the time, at the end of the day, you see the loss of near and dear ones. Tears flow. It's so painful. Just see in what way these studies help you. These studies, this exploration help you. Just see in what way you can help yourself to remove these tears. In what way you can help your family members to remove the tears. In what way you can help, if possible, your community and the whole world to remove the tears. Do these studies help us? This question. So in this connection, I would say that what is the benefit of all these reflections? Let us not be negative. Let's not be negative. Say, as Professor Samdallah very clearly indicated, that there's a soteriological purpose in exploring what constitutes the ontological reality according to the Buddhist Shakyamuni or Nagarjuna. It's not about making us a Buddhist. It's about removing your tears of the fear, tears of sadness in life. That is purpose. How? So, say, if you know the reality, that the reality is all constructed by your own mind, then the remote control of the whole world gets into your hand. When the remote control gets into your hand, then you decide. Why do you have to depend on others? When you depend on others, then the fears arise, whether things will happen the way I like or not. The fears arise. But the fears brings the tears. So, if you see that everything is just a matter construct, how the quantum physicists explain, the Niels Bohr said that observed make no sense unless that is observed. So observer dependent. Observer meaning the subject, subjective existence. Objective, nothing's there. If you know this, then it is like waking up from the sleep of ignorance. You be in the sleep, the dream, nightmare affects you. So much of fear, anxiety. The moment you wake up, the fears dissolve. Why? To see that the dream is nothing but subjective real. Objectively, it is empty. So waking up, the fears in the dream stops. So this philosophy is not for the purpose of spreading ism. It's not for the purpose of competing with modern science. It's for the purpose of stopping us from having to shed the tears. Okay, just as, this is from a sutra, just as in the dream of a young girl, she met with a boy and saw his death. Meeting with the boy, very excited, and seeing the death, so much of trauma and pain. Joyous was she at the meeting, and despair at his death. View all phenomena thus. If we want to stop shedding tears of life, then we need to see how the study of quantum physics and how the emptiness of objectivity as explained here, discussed here, will make total sense to us. Okay, these brilliant thoughts, they developed in this place, Nalanda, now 1st century through to 3rd century AD. And then we have some suggested, okay, this is the old version. It's fine. So there are actually more reading materials, but there are two things here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe Dojud Abdullah. Now with this, I would like to conclude the inaugural session, and I would like to convey my heartiest gratitude and heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Professor Avinash Chandra Pandey, our guest of honor, Venerable Geshe Samdallah, our keynote speaker from Quantum Physics Perspective, Professor Sisir Roy ji, and our director, Venerable Geshe Dojud Abdullah. Thank you very much. And also, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the participants for being vibrant and so dynamic, and at the same time being, concentrated to the topic of this conference. Right, so now we would like to begin our first session of the day within 5 minutes, which will be moderated by my colleague, Ms. Tenzing Domala. And the sub-theme for the first session is quantum objects, and subtle and gross matter in Buddhist philosophy. Now we would like to conclude this session, and we'll be back within 5 minutes. Thank you very much.